He isn't the most famous Goosebumps monster, but he is one of the most interesting. The Masked Mutant is a supervillain who gets bored of fighting his regular foes and goes looking in the real world for a new superhero to fight. Since first appearing in Goosebumps 25, Attack of the Mutant, the Masked Guy has had a few different appearances, but which version is the best? It was actually really hard to choose these rankings, and you might disagree with my choices. However, the worst version of the Masked Mutant was a pretty easy choice, and that is the audiobook version. In the 90s, Walt Disney Records made audio cassettes of 7 Goosebumps books, and Attack of the Mutant was one of the lucky ones that got chosen. The Masked Mutant's voice was done by Townsend Coleman, the guy who voiced Michelangelo in the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon. He does a fine enough job.
But you just melted the Masked Mutant. We both saw him melt.
No, you're mistaken. I just melted the magnificent Molecule Man.
What? Molecule Man?
Yeah, he worked for me. Sometimes I ordered him to dress like me, to keep people off my track.
He worked for you, and you melted him?
I'm a villain. I do very bad things, remember?
It's not a bad voice, but I don't love it either. It feels like it's stuck somewhere between trying to sound over the top and goofy, and also menacing and serious. It's not awful at all, but when the only thing you have to provide is a voice, I feel like it should be amazing. One version of the mutant that takes things closer in the right direction is the Goosebumps TV show version. Okay, I have a feeling a lot of people are going to get mad at me for putting the TV show this low, but I have my reasons. The creators of the original Goosebumps TV series did a great job bringing R.L. Stine's creations to life, but I feel like they did just a good job with the Masked Mutant. Don't get me wrong, I still really like this version of the mutant. He's over the top, like the crazy comic book villain he is, and the actor inside the suit, Scott Wickware, does a solid job.
You're not Skipper. You're not real. You're a comic book character too.
You're a liar!
Yes! I'm a liar! It's one of my better qualities.
The costume looks pretty good too, but the fake muscles are the one part I dislike. The main thing I don't like about this mutant is that he's not as evil as the original. The Masked Mutant was always kind of goofy, looking for a worthy hero to fight, but he had a dark side. In the Attack of the Mutant book, the mutant actually kills one of his own henchmen. In the episode though, that doesn't happen. Maybe it would have been too violent, but I don't know, the mutant dies at the end still. It's not like the show's creators had to include that part, but it didn't seem like they added much to replace it. Also, the ending of Skipper tricking the mutant into turning into acid to kill himself is kind of dumb. I get that the episode is an adaptation of the book, but they did alter the ending, so couldn't they have changed the way the Masked Mutant is defeated a little bit? Despite my complaining, overall, I think this is a good version of the Masked Mutant. Now what's an even better version look like? Well, we can find that in the PC game, Goosebumps Attack of the Mutant. This game shows how special the Masked Mutant is. He's the only Goosebumps character to have his name in the title of a game. Or at least half of it. The game has aged like milk, especially the cutscenes. The animation on all the characters is just so awkward, and the Masked Mutant is sadly no exception. Everything seems a bit over-exaggerated, especially the mutant's mouth whenever he speaks. It could almost work, considering the Masked Mutant is a comic book character, but I think it just comes off as awkward. Despite the presentation, I don't think this is a bad version of the mutant. Jim Belushi provides the voice, and it's good.
An unknown intruder from the outside world has slipped inside our headquarters, and he or she has to be apprehended at once!
He does kind of enunciate hard, but overall, I like the deep, threatening sounding voice. That's what I really like about this version of the Masked Mutant. He's pretty serious and evil. Sure, the animation makes him a bit silly, but I could see this guy being intimidating as a kid. The other thing I like about the PC version of the Masked Mutant is that he utilizes his shape-shifting power a fair amount.
Ah, you found it! Great! Hand it over!
Fool! You've fallen directly into my trap.
There's a great part where you bump into Dinah, one of the superheroes that helps you, but there's another Dinah right next to her, saying the other one is an imposter. Of course, it's a trick by the Masked Mutant, but I thought it was a cool way that they incorporated the Masked Mutant's powers into the game. Also, I feel like the part where the mutant transforms into a panther to fight the Galloping Gazelle is a reference to what happens between them in the original book. The last thing I think really makes this version of the mutant great is what's staring you right in the eyes. Purple. I honestly like Mutant having a purple costume more than the blue that the original had. Purple just seems more sinister and distinct compared to blue, and it matches his headquarters. Now while this next version of the mutant might be blue, I think he's the best one. Which one am I talking about? It's the Masked Mutant from Goosebumps HorrorTown. I promise I'm not joking. I really like what they did with this version of the mutant. I'll explain why, but first, I'll share what I don't like. My biggest and really only complaint is the way the mutant looks, at least in the actual HorrorTown gameplay. He's so skinny and doesn't appear threatening at all. In fact, he looks like someone dressing up as the Masked Mutant and not the mutant himself. What's weird is the game has this artwork of him, which looks really good. It appears whenever the mutant talks, and if they had just made the version that runs around more like that, then this could have been near perfect. Now, why do I like HorrorTown Masked Mutant the best? It's for what they added / changed. So the quest the Masked Mutant is part of basically follows the book's story, but not completely. First, the mutant mentions that he wasn't always a supervillain. He walked into the building that becomes his headquarters and it turned him into a comic book character, just like what happened to Skipper Matthews in the original story. It's a small detail, but adds a lot of depth. Now, what makes me rank HorrorTown as my favorite version of the Masked Mutant is how the quest ends. So just like in the book, the kid, who's named Eric instead of Skipper in the game, tricks the mutant into changing into acid. However, after Eric leaves, the mutant is alive. He reveals that he learned how to revert back into solid form. The Masked Mutant comic book just hadn't printed that issue yet, so Skipper, I mean Eric, didn't know. That's an awesome and funny change to the story. As I said, I didn't really like that the mutant got tricked into killing himself, especially since he's supposed to be this amazing villain. Even better, the quest ends when Masked Mutant finds Eric and reveals he's still alive. The mutant also ruins Eric's life by telling him that he'll have to fear every person and object he encounters, since it could be the mutant in disguise. I love this. While HorrorTown basically followed the story of Attack of the Mutant, they made some changes that I think make the Masked Mutant a better Goosebumps monster, and that's why this version is the best. What about the Haunted Mask though? To see the best and worst versions of it, watch this video.